Getting in the inbox is really a two-part journey, and it starts with authentication. I have shown this graphic many a year, but it continues to serve a purpose of making sure you understand how email gets, the journey that it makes, and how it gets into the inbox. You send your email campaign, it hits what's called an inbound mail server, and it does a couple of things, but it's ultimately the first thing that it's looking for is authentication protocols. And there is 4 key protocols that we have to, well, in some cases have to have, but at least 2 that we need and absolutely must have for certain ISPs or the internet service providers to allow our email to flow through and into the inbox. The first of which is SPF, or Sender Policy Framework. Each one of these authentication protocols is essentially a series, a text string that goes on our domain name server, our DNS. So we start with SPF, which is the gold standard of email authentication. What this does is tell all the ISPs, the internet service providers, hey, we are the brand who we say we are, and it's coming from a domain that we own. So it ties your ESP together with your actual DNS settings and say, yes, we are who we are. The second, and very similar to SPF, is DKIM, Domain Keys Identified Mail. You need at least one of these, either SPF or DKIM, at a minimum when it comes to authentication protocols to get past those inbound mail servers. Now, if you're a high volume sender, and what I mean by high volume is probably over about the 50,000 or more subscribers that you're emailing on at least a once a week cadence, there are 2 more additional authentication protocols that I would recommend. The first of which is this is DMARC, Domain-Based Message Authentication Reporting and Conformance, a massive mouthful of words that essentially says, okay, if we send something or if the ISP receives something and it doesn't look like you, what do you want me to do with these campaigns? Do you want me to quarantine them? Do you want me to send them back to you? And it allows you to have a feedback loop that comes from the ISPs that gives you a daily report of what that ISP is experiencing around your domain, just to see if you're having any brands that are sort of like phishing or attempt to like piggyback on your domains to deliver mail into the inbox. So it builds that connection with the ISP. The fourth and the newest is BIMI, or Brand Indicators for Message Identification. Now, BIMI, in this case, builds off of each one. In order to have BIMI, you need to have DMARC. In order to have a DMARC, you need to have at least an SPF and a DKIM record. So in order to have BIMI, you've had to have built all your authentication protocols, the 3 that ladder up into BIMI. Now, why BIMI matters is really because of this, because you're getting some features inside of the inboxes from being BIMI certified, such as a little profile image and explicit text and notifications that show that you're a verified sender. Now, this started on Yahoo, but it has quickly made the journey across all the major ISPs from Gmail. You get access, if you have a BIMI record, to things like, again, customizing that profile image. You can see here from Rev, the little bouncy GIF in that bottom left corner of that inbox, right? Gives you a little bit of a visual cue inside of the inbox. Ever so important these days in a sea of unopened email, where do our subscribers' eyes go? They're going to go to visual cues. BIMI is one way that we can get a visual cue that other senders may not have. Now, this is where the behemoth comes into the conversation, because beyond Gmail and, of course, all the major other ISPs, you have Apple, which arguably serves more mobile mail than any other platform that's out there amongst the OS system within Apple. We're talking Mac Mail, iPad Mail, and of course your iPhone Mail. Apple introduced BIMI support in iOS 16 and continues to support it and will continue to support it through their next iOS iterations, 17 that just dropped. And they're doing some interesting things like also showing you this big notification that this is a digitally certified email. Again, building trust. Of course, Apple's building their brand around privacy, and they want to make sure that you're respecting the inbox as much as they expect you to. And so BIMI is one way that they can do that, and they're serving up this information so people can see, hey, is this really the sender who says they are? They're also building it into contact cards. So if you've got contact information for companies and you tie that to a specific email address and it exists on the contact app inside of that person's phone, it will show you inside of the mail app that this is coming from the actual brand who they say they are. So they're continuing to support BIMI in a really nuanced way to make sure that people feel safe inside of the inbox. Again, getting access to that profile image and other features from BIMI makes it really important to think about, especially if you're doing a significant amount of email volume. There is some hard cost related to having BIMI. You need a verified mark certificate or a VMC certificate that costs about $1,000 per year. Again, probably only required if you're doing high volume sending within your brand, but there are some hard costs associated with getting these authentication protocols in place. So keep that in mind as you're budgeting in the future. Right after those authentication protocols, where you can be monitoring to ensure that you're getting into the inbox is these top 8 blacklists or block lists. You'll see the list here, but CBL, the composite block list, SpamHoss, SpamCop, Invalument, Barracuda, Lashback, PSBL, or the passive spam block list, and return path, which is also known as validity at this point. All of these are the major block and blacklists that are out there. If your domain exists or the IP address that you're sending from exists on one of these top 8, you are not getting into the inbox. The chances are very, very, very slim. So be mindful of tracking these, and I'm going to show you some platforms that can help you track this in just a second. Some other places that you may want to continue to monitor just to see how you're doing from a deliverability perspective beyond those authentication protocols is places like Google Postmaster Tools. For the SEO individuals in the room or experts, you'll be familiar with Webmaster Tools, or now called Search Console. This is essentially the same type of platform and dashboard experience that you get for Gmail. Google gives this to you for free. You just have to verify that you own the domain. And you get access to a bunch of data, about 120-day running information for things like spam rate. So that's someone that's in Gmail or the Google Workspace-enabled systems, platforms, that's reporting your domain or your campaigns as spam. IP reputation, right? What is the internet protocol address? What's the reputation of that address? Domain reputation, so on your .com, .org, .co, .uk, what is the reputation of that domain? Your feedback loop scores, authentications showing you, hey, are your authentication protocols, your BIMI, your SPF, your DKIM, and your DMARC, are they making sure that those are delivering for your campaigns? Is your data encrypted when it's delivered? And then also showing you any delivery errors. Delivery errors in this case are what we would call honeypots back in the day. These are email addresses for Gmails that don't actually exist. So somebody's giving you a fake email address to try and get access to like a deal or an offer. They will show you exactly where you're having delivery areas so you can hopefully pull those email addresses as quickly as possible out of your databases. So a really good tool to utilize that's 100% free. You just have to verify your domain.